You know what I'm saying? I'm sorry, I didn't have my microphone on. But I'm just saying, normally this is like way out of bounds. This is too much. By the way, I saw a lot of people watching. Please share this. We got to have a conversation, fam. Dios Mio Collazo for those listening to the podcast. This is found in translation, the show that stacks truth. Sometimes the hard truth, sometimes the bitter pill to swallow, but the truth indeed, our truth anyway. Thank you so much for joining us. Oh, where do we begin, my friends? Again, normally my lawyers, my teachers, my accountants, my Wall Street tycoons, my bodegueros, they'd be asleep by now. But they ain't going to bed. They're not only not going to bed, they're sending me texts. People I don't hear from for weeks and months at a time, my homie. I love these people. I wish I heard from you more, to be honest with you. They won't leave me alone. Ray, what do you think? Oh my God, Ray, what's going on? Oh my God, Ray, what's going on? Oh my God, Ray, what's going on? So I figured let me go on here and let you know what's going on, just from my perspective, because obviously, as I responded to our great friend Jason Mazier, if you went on the ground in these places, obviously we don't know what's going on. No pollsters, political. Why do they have polls? Why do these people make any money, as we're finding? But anyway, we'll get into it. Thank you all so much for joining us. There you go, Maria. So let's get it started, fam. I'm sure you want to know my thoughts on the new general vice president of basketball operations for the Sixers, but we'll leave that for another time. Let me let y'all know what's going on. First of all, this is what was supposed to happen. Let's look at it from a certain perspective. This is what was supposed to happen if you looked at it like 4 or 5 months ago. The map and the game plan was always the upper Midwest, and that because of Biden's ethos and because of the polling, that was always supposed to be the path for victory for Biden, and that's still in play. The hope for people like me was that as the polling and the momentum seemed to be going Biden's way, and the New South and the diversity and possibly this what I see is like this mythical suburban white person that was going to do all this flipping. I don't see that yet. I'm waiting for it, fam. To Biden was going to flip at least one southern state. Would have been nice. One. I'll get to you in a second, LB. One. You just need one. Remember the seminal Chris Rock cameo, and I'm going to get you, sucker. I got to bring LB for this reference because he's smiling. My compadre, yeah, has to get the rest of
one state, just one state.
So the paraphrase Chris Rock in the seminal movie "I'm Gonna Get You, Sucker." He's literally in the movie 18 Seconds, where he plays the greatest crackhead, one of the national crackheads in cinema. Can I get one state? I gotta. Can you break 100, LB, for one state? It's not gonna happen. Not gonna happen. So, but it wasn't supposed to happen 6 months ago. Nobody was thinking Florida. Nobody was thinking Georgia. Nobody was thinking. I guess Georgia's not impossible yet, but nobody was thinking any. These southern states. Even though I held a candle for North Carolina as of an hour ago, so I messed up on that one. So and then the thought was the upper Northwest, and then Arizona was the dessert, the cushion, and that's still very much in play. So on one level,
that's still very much in play.
Very much in play. Odds are that's what's going to happen. Plus, that one little congressional district in Nebraska, I want to shout out. LB, I got people everywhere. Veronica Quincy, my main girl, she's from Long Beach, so she is thugged out as any of our activists out there. But she fell in love with a brother from Nebraska, so now she lives in Nebraska too. Very timely though, because Veronica Veto's doing her thing out in the Cornhusker State, so that could come into play. But nevertheless. So while this is not a surprise, and this is what was sort of to happen because Trump was a slight favorite in all these places. In Ohio, he was a big favorite. So that was really kind of almost would have been shocking, frankly. Nevertheless, none of that's happening. So now we're left with, on one level, the map still could play out as expected. But on another level, no cushion, no room for error for Biden at this point. And let's be honest about it. Gun to your head, See, I'll be straight up. At gun to your head. At this moment, Trump is the slight favorite to win this. And we can talk about why. But that's the reality of the situation. From an electoral college perspective, he will not win the popular vote. Let's formally bring in my compadre, producer of Found in Translation, Elbert Garcia. Elbert, how are you, brother? How are you feeling? Just give me, before we get into Florida, because Florida is going to be a whole conversation. Just your overall feelings at this moment at 11:30 on the East Coast. You know, Brian Williams could talk to, you know, these Blanquitos, MSNBC, anyone's that could talk it. We can break it down here too. Just your thoughts. I feel like I'm talking to one of those historians, Michael Beschloss or something. So Elbert, give us your thoughts as a long time. As I sip on my Puerto Rican cup, anyway, talk to me, brother.
I wish
Give me
I
your
had
feelings. How you feeling, brother?
Maybe I have my que lo que water bottle.
If we had pulled off Texas, there'd be a little something in this. But
you know,
we just
part of it
drinking
is that
Stella right now. It's gonna be a
I
long
feel
night.
like we saw Texas. I feel like we saw Texas with, and this is like a replay of the Beto race, when we just got so close, right? Or we're thinking since it was so close. Look, I think, I don't know. I think I've made peace with this election a couple of days ago in terms of this weekend. There's a lot of people who have really worked their asses off, and in a lot of places we see those results come to fruition, right? I think even in Florida, and especially in some of these counties outside of Miami-Dade, where some of the turnout, you've got some really cool folks getting elected into local offices. I mean, even Miami-Dade, you had Luisa Santos, Ipana, who's leading in the school board race down there.
LB, with all due respect to school board races. By the way, we lost 2 congressional members. One of them was a damn good Latina.
But I was gonna say this.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is this, right? Is that, look, I know all the expectation is on the electoral, so all the stuff is on the Biden stuff, all that. But you know what? Like, we're not gonna know those things. You got to count every vote. There are places. I mean, shit, even in Florida, like and there's still places in Florida, including Miami-Dade, we still haven't counted the vote by mail.
That's true. They haven't declared, even though the math is pretty tough.
So what I'm saying is that, like, and look, Miami-Dade looks bad but we've been talking about Miami-Dade for the last 2 or 3 years, right? People were worried about Miami-Dade during the gubernatorial race, where Miami-Dade underperformed there, and Latinos specifically underperformed there, right?
That's right.
So again, I think anyone who's been following Florida politics and anyone who's been asking, especially local folks looking for money for Florida, have been telling folks, right? And the truth of the matter is that sometimes you just have to recognize when you've been, when they've been, and whether you call it's all the misinformation, the socialist angle, that had a huge effect in Miami-Dade, and Miami-Dade is 65% Latino.
No question. I want to pause the Florida piece for a second, though. I'm going to
get back to it.
No, that's fine. Because we're going to get to it. Look, everybody, that's what they want to talk about. These Northeast progressive Latinos are so pissed off. All my Caribbean people, all my Puerto Rican, Dominican, New York, and Philly, Scarlett Pineda, bring us some analysis. They ran a sucky campaign in Florida. We'll get to that. We agree with you. Christine Nieves, one of our great activists, also a great woman of faith. She ain't surprised. She's a smart cookie. Williams College graduate, my friend. She is a smart cookie. And of course, our homegrown member in her town in New Jersey. She's also elected official. We got to hook up with Aniesca, the school board people. I was waiting for y'all to come on. So we had but I was out here in the street too, girl, and I have some children I got to pay a little attention to. So, but this is the big picture thing. And before we get into Florida, we're going to get into that. And
I feel like you just got into that right moment there. Before we get into the big picture there.
Biden could squeak this out. It's possible. It's probably 50-50. Maybe statistically he's still slightly favored. But the thing that I think that just disappoints me as a human being is that there doesn't appear to be much of very little repudiation of this guy at all. His people, the people that voted for him in 2016, voted for him again. And maybe that's going to flip in the Philly suburbs and some of these, these mythical white suburban women I'm still waiting to save us. And maybe the black vote will just be enough in an upper Northeast. But the reality of the situation is he's as popular as ever. And I think that big picture, getting my emotions out of it as a Latino progressive person that has certain thoughts about how the world should be, that our country, even if Biden squeaks this out, we are not the country we think we are, and we're not going to be the country we think we're going to be, because of, I mean, how fundamentally, even if you forget all the policy issues, like even if you like believed in his vision, how poor a leader he is, how poor a human being he is, how poor a manager he is, how poor of a head of state. He's just so poor. It's like he gets F's everywhere he goes. And because of the cult, as our homegirl Scarlett just said, we accept it as a country. We accept it. And that is, now, you know, we can blame white people. We can get into all that. Obviously, there's Latino pockets that are part of the cult too. But that, LB, the part about how even a slight Biden victory, potentially, really shows how it's not, the irony of it is it's not really about our democracy. It's about the character of our country willing to settle for less for what? And that's the part that disappoints me.
I mean, white supremacy is real. I mean, I think that's the thing. Like, I just like I said when I said to you,
That's
like,
I wanted to talk to you about this, brother, because you say it straight up.
I'm just saying, like, I think I think it's not only real, but it's also like, you know, we can't avoid this conversation. We can't avoid this reckoning moment, right? Like, and at the end of the day, at the very least, he's very upfront about it. Like, there is no, like, I think that if there's anything that comes out of this election overall, big picture, as they say sometimes in the church on Sunday, is that if we asked for confirmation, we received it.
Amen.
Right? I mean, that's what it is. Right? I mean, sometimes we ask for confirmation and we get it, and we don't want to, and we're too afraid to figure out what it means. Right? There's a lot of people, call them good, call them bad, don't judge them, whatever. At the end of the day, there's going to be places, regardless of a Biden win or not, or a Trump win or not, there's going to be people in this country who voted in 2 electoral cycles for a racist, for a misogynist.
Moron. Not a smart racist. They're smart racists. Tom Cotton's a smart racist. A freaking moron racist.
But ultimately, these are folks, right? Like, and again, if you want to use races, I mean, like, however it is, they're just not people who are supposed to be the moral leaders that we want.
That's right.
Right?
That's right.
And part of it is that, like, you know, in some ways, I think it's really a call for folks to, like, they need to step up their game. And again, I think, you know, like, look, we're in a precarious situation, right? Because at the end of the day, people are going to always blame folks of color because they're going to say you didn't come out, or they're going to say, or they're going to say, like,
they're crazy, they're dumb,
Florida, they're going to all those kind of things. But at the end of the day, like, first of all, again, what, we're trying to save your asses again?
And the only way Biden wins is black people in Detroit, Milwaukee, and Philly right now. It's the only way. I mean, you know, Phoenix, Arizona could help cushion, but that's really it. It's really up to black people in those 3 cities with huge turnouts. It's the only way we win.
And again, it's more than election, right? We know this, right? It's more than one election cycle. It's more than one race. It's more than one thing. And I mean, again, I don't pretend to know anything about other races and other places and other states, right? The only thing that I know of, as good as I know, is the place in which I live now in terms of Florida, right? And Zoe Colon, I mean, she could probably, you know, she's talking about that time of year when we do the walk of shame. I mean, it's going to be interesting to see what those Central Florida, Orlando numbers are, right? But, like, you know, there's a lot of people did a lot of good work and succeeded, right? And I think at the end of the day, a lot about Florida,
that's true,
is a lot about the Democratic Party.
No question about it. LB, let's really quickly.
So I'm sorry about getting into
No, it's my fault. I'm the one cutting you off. But the so expound upon that. So basically, what, and I don't think it's going to totally make the difference.
You're freezing a little bit, so I don't know.
Yeah, but basically, what Adelby's talking about is Hillary Clinton won Miami-Dade by about 30 points, and Biden's only going to win Miami-Dade by like 10. So the that shrink, that flipping, primarily probably of a lot of Latinos, primarily Cuban Americans, is going to be a big part of the story. It's not the whole story because it's 4 points now. It's not going to be 20, 30,000 vote difference. And so why don't you, LB, describe what has happened? What was the strategy of Trump over the last few years, primarily on social media and in media down there, that basically the Democrats didn't counter attack for 3-4 years, and now it's coming to haunt them big time?
Yeah, I mean, I think in essence, what the Republicans have done a pretty good job of down here, and I think everybody knew it, but part of it was just getting the resources to fight it, was to kind of pin, Democrats and progressives as just another, as socialists, as people, again, and again, particularly in Miami-Dade, where you have folks in terms of Cubans. Who have the experience, fighting communism and Castro, as well as recent Venezuelans, and then, to be quite honest, other Latin American, like expatriates who fled.
Yeah, I mean, it's a mixed match. There's as many Ecuadorian voters as Venezuela. So yeah, there's a lot of. I mean, every Latin American country has a population in Florida. So,
but it's really harping on that thing, and we saw it in 2018 in terms of the gubernatorial race between DeSantis and Gillum, right? And we saw, and again, those were the first kind of previews of Miami-Dade County, in essence, like perhaps not coming out for Democrats as perhaps they had kind of wanted and stuff, and so. And I think that's that's real, right? I mean, that's a real thing to have to come out. And I think part of the story that gets lost in all of this analysis is that there's a lot of great third-party groups, nonprofits, who are doing a lot of great work registering voters, who are doing a lot of things in terms of get out to vote, to engage voters, to engage low propensity voters. But they're doing that as a way of helping out what is what you could realistically call a pretty weak local party system, or at least a local party that hasn't delivered a lot of wins. Now they'll point out today and say, like, in terms of county mayor, the county mayor's race today, Danielle Lavina Cava, looks to become the first female county mayor here in Miami-Dade. That's great news. But the truth of the matter is there's been a lot of losses. And what we see in Miami-Dade is not that they just underperformed, but there was a red wave in Miami-Dade. I mean, you pointed out Carlos Jimenez defeats, the current county mayor. I mean, defeats Debbie
Ecuatoriana. She's damn good congresswoman. She's good people. That's a tough one.
Maria Elvira Salazar defeats Donna Shalala, or looks like she's defeating Donna Shalala, right? Sure. And even Debbie Wasserman Schultz, I think the last time I was looking at it, was having a tough race in terms of her thing there, right? And so
there's a couple things. Is that so yes, Democratic Party in Florida been weak a long time. That's something we've dealt with. The big issue here, it goes beyond Biden, because on some level, Biden had less time to address this because he had a primary. So he only had 7 months, as opposed to the Democratic Party, which had 4 years. This is something we've been talking about for years. This messaging that the Trump administration and Republicans were doing with DeSantis, with Rubio, with Rick Scott, to this particular cohort of Latinos. And so when you have years of social media messaging, of Spanish language radio, talk shows, when you have other conservative Latino commentators in Spanish language media in South Florida, when you have the time they put into it, like Trump listens to them. So we want hardline Cuban policy. He gives them hardline Cuban policy, right? He has Pence for the social conservatives. There's a great conversation, a thoughtful conversation happening in our comment section about that. So that's a piece of this puzzle, right? So, on some level, we've been sounding this alarm, and the party didn't listen. Not on national level, on state level, didn't listen and didn't invest. And so the other piece that we're going to get hammered on tomorrow, because of course, as Leo and our other friends are saying, in the chat, is that Latinos are going to get blamed for this. They're going to get blamed for Florida. They're going to get blamed. The other piece is that, that's a good sign. Pennsylvania, Lackawanna County. That, in South Texas, in the Rio Grande Valley, which is a Democratic area, but it's not a especially progressive area. And there's always a traditional lack of investment down there. The numbers the splits were not high, for Biden. So he won those areas, but he didn't win them overwhelmingly the way you would think, he would in a Latino Democratic area. And we're going to get blamed for that. But we've been sounding the alarm for years. And particularly in this cycle, shout out to our homie Chuck Rocha that tweeted, "We told you so," earlier this evening, the man that ran the Bernie Sanders Latino operation. So about this lack of investment in the Valley. Kamala went and loaded them out over the weekend, which is great. But the Democratic Party didn't invest in that area. So another area that we're going to get blamed for when they don't invest the work. This is the reality situation, fam. In 2018, if Beto, and we love Beto, we went to college with Beto, cool. But if Beto had an A- Black Latino field operation in 18, he would have won that election. That's what cost him. And maybe this is what's costing us Texas today. I don't know. We'll have to look at the numbers. But those are the things that are in play. And this is the reality. And I think you may have said it when you called me. Thank you, Juan. I know my man's got a lot of emotions down there. A great friend in Central Florida. If you need immigration lawyer in Florida, Juan De La Torre. That's a freebie, brother. Melanie Mendez Gonzalez, one of our great San Antonio friends, saying the same thing. The Dems did not invest in South Florida. So, we know what we're talking about because we talk to good people like you folks on the ground. Is that I lost my thought. But the bottom line is that it's that lack of investment. And let's think about it, fam. Let's think about it. Think about it logically. Think about what you've seen in the media, the political media, which y'all always sending me tweets about the latest political article. I think of our great friend, Elbert Mauricio Mena, that reads the New York Times religiously. And just think about the obsession, our mainstream media and our mainstream Democratic political establishment obsesses about the mythical moderate white person that's going to flip to them. Think about the time, the care, the investment. When you have sitting there hundreds of thousands of Latino voters in Texas, you have sitting there Latino voters that in 2016 went for Hillary big time Miami-Dade. Why is not that investment done for base voters?
And Ray, let me also say one thing too, is that I also think that what has to be also said is, and I think, and look, I love my Northeast folks, right? But they'll look at Florida and they'll say, or some people will say nationally, well, Latinos didn't deliver for us, right? But let's be real. At the end of the day, Latinos in Florida, Latinos in general in Florida, made an impact in this election.
It's a good point.
They did, right? And the difference between Democrats and Republicans is that Republicans actually know that they can't win Florida without the Cuban vote, right? They know that, right? And they will invest and they will put people and do the things that they will need to do. And ultimately, at the end of the day, Democrats won't do the same thing. And you hear the same thing from the African-American community about Democrats in other places, right? And so part of what we have to also understand as a people too, is to also understand and forget this idea, right, that just because we're Latinos, that we're going to also vote a certain particular way for our communities, right? And what's more important is that if we don't actually engage and educate, but more importantly, engage folks in the process, it's not that they're going to sit at home. It's that they're going to go to the other side, right? I mean, that's the important. I think it used to be people used to, if we don't engage folks, and they'll become low propensity voters. No, if you don't engage folks, then the misinformation from the other side will convince them to do other things.
That's right.
Right.
Or they'll bring up issues that resonate somewhat, and then they become the dominant issues. You know, so I wanted to just, all of you guys are my great friends, but Joey Barra, my great homie from San Antonio, they sure did invest South Florida, and they take us for granted. We begged them to come down here. Blows the mind how the RGV turned out. And Melanie Mendez Gonzalez brings up a point I want to expound upon. Another great friend from SA, and they let the fracking thing go too long. Biden, Harris, Dems needed to have addressed that much earlier. See, that's a very interesting point Melanie brings up. So I think one of the issues with Democrats and progressives nationally is they assume that I mean, quite honestly, they assume Latinos are more progressive than they are. Let's just keep it real. Your typical Latino voter is center left, but that's it. Now we have this, before my progressives get on my ass, we do have this young emerging cohort, this strong left flank that's getting bigger and bigger because of our young population and more ideological. But the reality is they're not the majority yet by a long shot in our community. And as Christine and others are mentioning, we do have socially conservative tendencies with certain social, I mean, really, it's abortion, honestly. It's really coming down to that. I don't think the LGBT thing is as big an issue anymore. But I mean, that's a powerful force. And as well as other issues, let's keep it real. Let's just keep it real. And these are the things we don't like to talk about. Let's just keep it real. The law and order message, in the same way that white people get terrified when they see a black person throw a chair through a window, Latinos in the hood get scared of that too. And we don't address the messaging to match. Now, part of that is racism Latinos have, but part of that is just generally, hey, I live in the more dangerous neighborhoods. You activists don't. Jump in.
But the other thing I also want to say too, because it's something that my mother used to always say, you know, my mother always used to say, mira, but all that talk about being united, mira, at the end of the day, Trujillo was a Dominican too. Our people have fucked up shit in their country, in our countries, right? Let's not pretend that at some point when this fight gets fought, some people are going to be wrong and some people we're going to have to, like, you know, argue against. Right? Yeah. Like this idea that like suddenly we have to have a big kumbaya moment. Like it doesn't happen in our country. So why the hell should it happen here? Like I think at the end of the day, like we also have to, and again, there has to be education and stuff. And I'm not saying that we don't do that, but at the end of the day too, we also have to figure out that sometimes we, you know, all, you know, as they say, right? Like all can, you know, like they're not all part of the family. Right?
Yeah.
And even family still hurt you. Right? No one's going to say that those folks aren't Latino. I'm not suggesting folks aren't Latino. What I'm suggesting is that like our own people will sometimes hurt us. So like, you know, the truth of the matter is that we have to organize around the issues and we have to actually get political wins and policy wins, right? Like, I mean, that's right. You know, we have to do those things, right? And, you know, at the end of the day, politics is a game of winners. I mean, yes, there are moral victories. Yes, there are seeds. Yes, there are also things, right? But at the same time, too, you know, any community also wants to see wins, right? And in places, especially I think in Florida, what you're seeing is that too many times we're not getting, you know, the large wins that people need, right? And I do think that what will get lost and what also has to be fought against is this idea that because potentially the state was lost, that the effort was lost, right? I mean, Puerto Ricans came out in huge ways in Orlando, right? I think that the numbers anecdotally I see, and I'll be curious to see how the numbers pan out. But in places like Jacksonville and other places where Latinos, you don't think of Latinos being around in Florida, that folks made a difference there, right? And so how can we turn that energy, right? At least in Florida, people are thinking about how do we turn this energy into what will be another Herculean kind of effort, which is a governor's race in 2022. And an opportunity to, you know, to fight in the Senate, right? And in that case, it's going to be against, you know, who knows whether it'll be Marco Rubio again running again. But if it's Marco Rubio again, it's again facing somebody who has the support of a lot of Cuban Miami-Dade folks, but never necessarily, you know, won the Latino vote per se, but will run as a Latino, right? And how the party will do that and galvanize people, right? So I think in Florida, we have to keep those things. But at the end of the day, look, I mean, I think the hardest thing is to how we figure out how to keep people who participated in this election today, especially in a place like Florida, and who are disappointed with the result, right? How do you keep those folks engaged? How do you do that? And part of the message I try to tell folks like that is that, this is a marathon. This is not a sprint, right? This is not like you vote in one election and that's it, right? I mean, that's the way it is, right? And if people want to look on the other side, at the Cubans, at the Republicans, at the folks like that, I mean, there's certainly an example there. But we have to and that's the hardest thing sometimes if you're down here, not just in Florida, and especially dealing with national money or national folks, is understanding that Florida's a different dynamic, right? And Zoe tells us every time she's on the trip, on the show, there's 3 places in Florida. It's South Florida, it's Central Florida, and it's North Florida.
But it's right? but it's also and I know Vanessa Rivera from Tampa made this point on Facebook today, and Zoe says all the time, it's the South. It's still the South. And so whether it's South, Central, North, that's a dynamic around religiosity, but just around being in the South. There's a certain conservative ethos to the South. That's just a natural part of our country, part of the dynamic. Latinos fall into the culture where they live just as much as anything.
But I'm going to push back a little bit on that, right? Because I heard someone say this on Maria Hinojosa and Julio Varela were doing. I mean, I've been doing a great live.
By the way, I put on my democracy throwback for Juan, so I just want him to see that.
Oh, I love it. But we talked to some folks earlier today, and it's true. I think that there's a tradition of conservatism in the South. There is. But when you really think about it, there's also a strong level of progressive roots in the South as well, right? The civil rights movement comes out of the South, right? Even if we think about the quote unquote founding fathers and all the liberal, those ideas around the Constitution, that shit isn't coming from the North. I mean, with all due respect to Hamilton, right? I mean, I think the thing is that there's a lot of, but what you've seen in the South is a more systematic way of also silencing people and silencing that progressive tradition, right? And so I think part of it is that I think we need to make sure that as we move on to the next elections or the next cycles, whether they're local, state, federal, whatever, is that we build upon the work that was being done here, right? And in some ways, that's what's so frustrating about Florida, is that people will always think of it as a purple state because the margins are small. But think about it: we got a Republican governor and 2 Republican senators, right?
We've got a Republican legislature. Republican legislature.
And until today, we had a Miami-Dade commission, a county mayor that's been Republican for at least 2 or 3 terms, right? So there's this myth of the purpleness of Florida that we also have to deal with.
Well, it's purple because it is always close. So that's it's reddish purple. I don't know what Jason Mazur made that point earlier. It's true. Florida got to show and prove something. You're right. So there is our girl Fried, was the ag commissioner she represents. But anyway, you're right. The Democrats are slim pickings. Right? I want to shout out that our friends are having a very thoughtful. I really appreciate folks' thoughtfulness in the chat. I can't put all the comments up, but
definitely some great chats. Some great conversations in the chat.
Washington State, our homie Leo Perales is chiming in. Assyria and Melanie and Juan. That buy into that too. And Melanie, I believe, mentioned that, one of the gentlemen that was trying to run Biden off the road was a Latino. So, who apparently has been a part of other incidents. But that's the Fox News called Arizona for Biden. Well, that's helpful. It's still not enough. The scenario of, I think, is very real. He wins, Biden wins Wisconsin, Michigan, loses PA because he's losing it now, but gets Arizona and the district in Nebraska for 270 would be delicious. And I think there's a 15% chance of that. It's pretty crazy, but Syria, there's a lot of great comments happening here. But I don't want to overdraw this. Give it a few more minutes. We'll run it back sometime tomorrow, I'm sure. I think the analysis here is, obviously Arizona will be very helpful, but at the end of the day, if we don't get all 3 in the upper Midwest, it literally comes down to the congressional district in Nebraska. So, especially Pennsylvania, because it's much larger. So in a way, you'd rather win Pennsylvania. You could lose Wisconsin because Arizona basically evens out numerically. But we'll see. I mean, at this point, none of them are in the bag, so it's quite possible Trump could win one or two of these states. So this is very precarious right now. Very precarious.
Yeah, and it's going to be precarious because of the fact also is that you've got ballots to be counted, whether it's in Pennsylvania or even in some of these other places. I mean, I want to say that for me, locally looking at Florida, the counting of these ballots make a huge difference, especially on some of these local races, right?
Yeah, for the local races.
It may not make a difference. It may only. I mean, again, we talk about the 100,000 vote difference in in Florida for Hillary, in terms of Hillary's loss. But that number didn't finally come in until all the votes were counted and all those things there. Like that night, It was a much larger kind of thing. So, it's got it's one of those things that I think is important all around the country. Folks have got to we got to wait. We got to wait for it to count the votes, and hopefully
one of the about this whole situation, I was very much focused on thinking about all the scenarios around voter suppression, around intimidation. That didn't play out. I was thinking, and maybe we'll find out later, that there was going to be, particularly with Republican-led county election boards, massive cheating, or some folks being strong-armed. I mean, I guess that's possible. Maybe that's the reason the polls are so wrong. Who knows? But it doesn't appear at first blush that there's anything obvious or something that looks astray. Nobody got hurt tonight, as far as I know, around the country. Thank God. At an election, at a polling site. And I hate that it's funny to say it, but Trump's going to win or lose this without any nonsense. If he might win Pennsylvania. I don't, these worst case doomsday Democratic scenarios, I think there's a good chance none of that plays out, because I think it's either going to be clear Biden wins or it's clear Trump's going to win. So I'm just, which is kind of a good thing, but at the same time, Trump does not appear
Well, I will say, I will say que la noche está larga, so I'm not going to sure what's going to be in terms of for the rest of the week.
And by the way, he's winning all these states so far. I mean, I don't know which, all these upper Midwest states. I know it's early, but had the votes in, he's winning all of them. And I know the vote that's being counted is his vote, but it's still the truth. So,
I mean, look, I think at the end of the day, there's a lot of people. Look, sometimes people will vote for the devil that they know rather than the devil they don't.
That's true.
Right? I mean, I think that's why the incumbency, no matter who's who's there, is always a difficult thing, right?
Yeah.
And I think
by the way, without COVID, Trump would have won as easy as it looks to me. I mean, COVID is the only thing that kept this close. I
don't know. I mean, that's what the narrative. I get the narrative folks and the messaging folks. I don't know. I don't know. I mean, I think there's a lot to be said. I mean, I think there's a lot
worse than this. It would have been better. I mean,
look.
And by the way, let me ask you a question. Do you think the candidate made a difference? I don't know. I mean, I don't think Bernie would have been good, but just because he's so, I don't know. I mean,
let me ask you this question.
Okay.
Let me ask you this question.
You answer my question with a question.
Were you really that excited about Bill Clinton? Were you? I mean, when you think about all the different Democratic candidates that you've seen over the last X amount of years.
That's fair.
Right? Obama.
Obama's the other one. And by the way, if people remember, I liked Obama, but I wasn't like one of the big flag wavers for Obama.
But think about
I was down with him, and I liked him. I'm not going to say I didn't like him, but I wasn't like, I wasn't part of the Obama cult, because there was a cult there too. Different vibe, nice cult.
But that's what I'm saying, right? Like at the end of the day, this is the thing. And this is the thing that gets me. Like we know, because we know how government functions, we know how those things are. That as much of it is that it's about the team that comes in. Right. And the big guys get the big, and usually it's guys, right? Get the starring quality, right? But the truth of the matter is that it's important who gets to actually choose who's your next Secretary of Labor versus who's your next Secretary of Energy. Like the
You think
agency.
Americans care? You and I disagree on this, but do you think Americans care about any of that stuff?
I don't
They
think
don't.
they care, but
This
what
guy's the
I'm
most
saying,
corrupt president of all times. He got impeached. The guy owes Russian, and nobody. These people don't care. They don't care.
they don't, but they don't care because
So what
they
are you
need.
talking about cabinet members for, brother? They don't know. They don't know who the cabinet members are. Betsy DeVos is sinking our education system into the toilet. They don't care.
But that's my point. My point is that, like, at the end of the day, like, whether or not, look, and you and I can argue about this of what gets sold to the what
You
people
love
think
Karen.
is exciting and flashy or whatever, right? But the truth of the matter is that at the end of the day, he has spent. We talked about this 4 years ago, right? I mean, people laugh about Trump steaks, right? People talk about hip hop, rappers, but the fact that you could that he's probably been quoted more times in hip hop lyrics than any other president, maybe even Obama, before 2016, because all the folks would look, because people bought his salesmanship about him being rich and powerful. That still carries on, right? You're not gonna tell me that in every, like, all these different things, like whether it's all these, like, hip hop folks, having the conversation around him in these last couple of days didn't affect something. I mean, the other thing too is that we didn't hear
Didn't
about.
help. Didn't help.
And
Didn't
again, I
help.
mean, there is something to be said about the art of subtle suppression and not so subtle, right? That Republicans have gotten really, really good at, right? I mean, seriously, I mean, and I see that especially in a place like down in Florida, down in like Homestead. A lot of this about Trump supporters being very active and being like out and about. A lot of people down in some parts of South Florida we're literally like, I don't feel safe putting my Biden Harris, sign out.
I don't
Right?
rep like that. I keep my stuff to myself because I don't trust nobody. I'll be honest with you, and there's another conversation for another time.
Yeah.
And not. I'm gonna be real honest with people, and it's getting late. Is that, and this is real more on a personal level, and you can probably surmise this from knowing me at some stage of my life. Most people don't know me the whole time, but that on some level, as a kid, since being a kid, I've always on some level felt isolated because I grew up in Philadelphia in a very segregated, racialized city. And, Latinos were sort of like the low people on the totem pole because, well, we weren't black. We're blackish, but we were the Spanish speaking people. We were the people nobody understood. And we lived in very segregated neighborhoods. And so living in, first of all, that bubble, and always feeling, despite the fact that I'm very Americanized, yo hablo inglés muy bien, I'm an educated guy, I seem pretty integrated into this country, even though I have this labia in my way of understanding the country. I've always felt isolated, and I don't really, and throughout my life, I know this sounds really weird. I've never quite felt that comfortable with white people because of this dynamic. Because always in the back of my head, because when I was a little kid, it was so a dominant theme in the racialized, segregated city I grew up in as a little kid. And us being like not even black, just like, like in that kind of hierarchy. And now this era has brought, and I think a lot of people watching this can agree, that one of the significant things of the Obama era was a feeling, particularly I think with Latinos kind of from our vibe, like middle class, like have people that kind of got out the hood and are trying to establish an identity and teach their kids like, there's going to be a little bit of world for you, that you're not going to deal with this. Is that the Obama years like gave us that breath, like, okay, maybe we're going to be a little more accepted. Maybe that takes a little bit of the stress of that we've experienced. Our kids will deal with 20% less of that, and their demographics going to be very diverse. And then this happens, and I'll tell you that, and I don't know why I'm getting into this, but I don't know really what my point is, but I just want to share with you the human impact of this for a lot of us, right? I'm saying this to say that I feel even more isolated in some ways than ever, because even though I have this network of people that care about me and I love and I connect with, and I have a lot of friends and all that shit, but I feel more isolated than ever because I feel like a prisoner in my own country. I don't, and the part of it's COVID. I don't go to sports bars because there's a lot of white people at sports bars, and I don't want them to talk shit about me and Mexicans, and so I don't go to places, and it's really tough. And because and I know a lot of people feel that way on some small level, but it really impacts me on a personal level because I don't want to feel like that. I love everybody. I don't want to, but I can't deny what I'm seeing. And it's really, it's tough. It's tough. And I don't want to say, oh, white people are fucked up. And, they're getting played by this guy like we are, right? Because he ain't doing shit for them either. And but at the same time, it's just the cultural impact on all of us, on our psychosis, is something that win or lose, we're gonna have to deal with. And it's hard.
No, I mean, America's gonna need a whole big therapy session for freaking another generation. I mean, and look, I mean, there's been a lot of polls that talk about, especially among not just rural white people, but even white people in general, about their feelings of where the country is going and their feelings in general. I mean, it's ironic. Pew did, I think Pew reported on this about a month ago or whatever, and talked about how ironically, it's people of color statistically that actually have higher feelings for hope in the future than the white folks, right?
More optimistic, yeah.
Which is amazing when you think about how much shit, particularly like Black folks, indigenous folks, right, have had to go through, right?
Possible.
But it's all in this reckoning. It's all in this reckoning of in terms of this world here. But I have to say tonight, and again, we don't know what the final tallies will be. We kind of have an inkling, maybe.
It's gonna be tough, bro.
But either way, it's gonna be tough. And honestly, it's just gonna either be bad or fucked up. Like that's what we're dealing with, right? In the next 4 years, right? Either bad or fucked up, right? And the truth of the matter is, and again, we don't know how the Senate's gonna, if the Senate's gonna be a firewall. We don't know all these things.
That's not looking good either. But that's another story.
But
could be 50-50. Could be 50-50.
But you know what? No one expect. I will say this, and I will honestly say this. This is if we haven't gotten to the point, we are now at the point where people, and I say this particularly white people, are going to have to choose a side, right? And they're going to have to choose a side as to what they want, right? And parties are going to have to decide what they're going to do and what they're going to build, and if they're going to build stuff with folks of color or not, right? In some ways, for the Democratic, I think people have been talking about the Democrat Party in Florida trying to come to Jesus moments for a while. And if this isn't it, then I don't know what the hell is, right? But there's going to be a lot of discussions there, and it's going to be in all sectors, right? And we start to see that in sports, right? We're starting to see that in philanthropy. And now the problem is that there's going to be the pushback, right? Because now people are going to be emboldened by whatever these turnouts are to do things like stop systematic, to stop recognizing systematic racism, to doing all these other things. And you know what? We're just going to have to figure out how we're going to do it, right? I'm not as pessimistic tonight, maybe because deep down inside, not that I'm expecting it, but I know that this is, if this is really white supremacy that we're really trying to fight, which you are, then it's not, it's 400 years of white supremacy is not going to get resolved in a fucking 8-year Obama term.
That's true.
It's not going to fucking be done.
That's true.
And just like diseases mutate, so does this shit too.
Yeah.
Right. And unfortunately, in terms of our generation as Gen Xers, I think it's hard on us because I think we were taught to believe that if we say the right thing, if we code switch enough, if we get the right education, if we learn enough of the past to remix that into the future, we can do that. Right? We can actually make a difference, right? And for us, I think in terms of our particular generation, it's a real question of faith because it's no, we might actually have to we can't, you can't be, there's no way you can code switch yourself to revolution, right? Like if you really want to break down white supremacy and establish a just world, then people who had power will have to give that power up. And in some ways, white people will have to decide that the benefit and the privilege that they have, like, they need to give that up.
Well, what Juan
Right?
De La Torre is saying in the chat, I want to make sure we get our different perspectives in, is that they made the decision, LB.
Then they did. That's what I'm saying. But that's why I said that in some ways it's confirmation. Today is confirmation day.
Keep riding. Hey, you know, we say that. Those are generalizations. I mean, we're talking at the end day 5347. Let me tell you something. I was in North Philly all day. And you know what? I saw kind of wonderful white people, all races, help being translators, being election protection lawyers for Latinos. They didn't know. They drove in from Maryland. They drove from New York. They drove from Jersey. And, you know, in a great spirit of camaraderie, collaboration, respect.
No doubt.
So, you know, look, there's a lot of good in the world. And, you know, look, I mean, look, your average Trump supporter.
But Ray, I just want to say, like, when I say people have to choose a side, I think, you know, like Juan said as well, like, people have chosen sides. And I do want to say, like, there are people out there that are choosing that, right? That are trying to, like, to try to share their power, to give up their power, right? Like, there are people who are doing that across sectors, you know, in different places in their companies. Like, there are people who are doing that every day. So I don't want to say like people aren't doing it, because people are, right? I think, and the other reality is that, you know, again, I think progressives, Democrats, however you want to, intellectuals, you know, people have to, like, have some real conversations with people, right? And not everyone can have that conversation. Like, you have to find the right person to a certain degree to have that conversation with it. But I also want to make it clear that I think we were brought up thinking, if you educate people enough, they will do the right thing. They will do good, right?
I remember that.
And I think we want to face the reality that a lot of us know, is that for a lot of people that works. And for some people, it is an issue of power. Like, some people continue to do what they want because they want to flex. And at some point, we got to flex back. And
Michael Collazo, the Tower of Optimism. He's not feeling good right now. I don't blame you, brother. I'm not feeling great at the moment. I'm not feeling great at the moment either. Even on Nebraska 2 is doing good. Anyway, let's wrap this up, LB. It's getting late for East Coast people. I do want to shout out, with everything going on, and I was in the field. Actually, I do want to say real quick, I do want to shout out the team that worked for me, Melissa Arce and my team. We made over 250,000 phone calls to Latino voters in Pennsylvania. We had a very smooth operation, a lot of enthusiasm. We educated a lot of people about the vote by mail process, and just in general, the voting process. Got a lot of people there, polling place information. My team in Florida did a wonderful job. I mean, you know, they did the best they could, doing some really good work out there, despite very challenging conditions with COVID. You know, I got to give a shout out to, you know, the Latino community of Philadelphia. I think we're going to have a very good total. I saw a lot of positive, good vibes and strong interest in this election. I particularly want to shout out, not just because my compadre is sitting next to me, my Dominicanos in Pennsylvania. People saw the social media video. I was able to take Doña Ofreceria, I think he had a name like that, to the polls. That was a great moment for me today. And in general, the Dominican vote in Pennsylvania came out really strong. So I want to shout out our homie, State Representative Danilo Burgos, who has cultivated that community here as the first Dominican in the Pennsylvania legislature. We got to spend some time with him earlier today. And so, look, and I know people around the country in Texas and Arizona, and I think the bottom line is unity. You know, the people we deal with ain't about dividing. And that, I think, is the frustration, is that we're cool with everybody. We're trying to be cool with people. We're trying to stand up for ourselves, trying to get respect. We're trying to get a seat at the table. But this isn't about a you or me thing. And then the other side, that's all it's about, it seems. And from a rhetorical thing or a policy thing. And, you know, the reality is that, like I said, I think at this point, I'd say Trump's a slight favorite to win this. That, you know, I just think about all the people that are going to get hurt by another year of nonsense with COVID because he's not going to do anything. And I think about what could happen with the Affordable Care Act if it expires with the Supreme Court next week. You think this guy's going to figure out a legislative response? He can't manage anything. The vaccines will be distributed terribly. And, just all that incompetence added up. And it's going to cost lives, stress, medical bills. All of a sudden, millions of people are going to have these big medical bills again. And, we're going to key to fight for those people because, LB, we are privileged. And I don't have any, I'm not an Afro-Latino. I don't live in the hood. Let's keep it real. We're not all in the same situation, but we have to fight for these people. And, the last thing I'll say, not to put a bummer on this, is that one of the few things that this administration's announced about what they want to do the next term is they want to treat immigrants worse. Stephen Miller announced that little fucking agenda. So any of our friends that want to petition their family members, that's not going to happen. And our people in these detention facilities are going to get treated worse. We already have heard cases of kids, Central American kids, just being sent to Mexico, put on the border and left for their own devices. So, I think about that because on some level, we're not going to be okay, but you and me probably be okay, right? On some level, but the people amongst us don't have the privileges we have that I worry about. And any last thoughts, Selby, before I shout out Puerto Rico real quick?
Look, I think the only thing that gives me the only thing that gives me hope for the future, not that I'm optimistic that tomorrow will be a better day, right? But like that gives me kind of hope. Is that Ray, too many of our folks have worked too hard, right? For us not to continue, right? Too many people have died, right?
Especially our women.
To stay here, right? And if part of our job is to just hold the line for the next 4 years, and that's what we do. And if part of our job as a generation is to just hold as much of the line or to stop losses or to stop the gap, then maybe that's historically what our job is to do, right? And if we're lucky, we get to live long enough to see a newer day, a brighter day. But I can't. It's hard not to get up in the morning because you know what? Because tomorrow, we, like a bunch of other people, still have to fucking get up, right? Because at the end of the day, my kid doesn't give a shit about this election, right? She cares whether or not she's gonna be able to get a grade on her virtual school, right? And so I'm hopeful because I've seen a lot of good people. I saw your team do a lot of great stuff. I've seen a lot of people down here in Florida do a lot of good work. I see a lot of good people, a lot of stuff. And so I think that there's still a lot of good people. I think that's the issue with the other side. The other side doesn't see that there's a lot of good people. And so we just have to figure it out, and that's it.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And there's certainly a whole there's no conversation going on here at all, which is part of the problem. The last thing, Joey Bata, very nice comment. Appreciate you, brother. You are a part of that, talking about all the great people that do good things. So there's a lot of good people. I appreciate the thoughtfulness with the chat. I know we're a little down right now, a little scared, but the community here we've built, it's been very helpful, I think, for all of us, a little therapeutic. The last thing I want to say on the Puerto Rican piece, first of all, again, these are projections. Florida ain't Puerto Rico's fault. I just want to leave it there. I think we did our job, but we'll see. And one of the things that was mentioned on social media was that the Democrats, Biden, whatever, probably left some base votes there on the table. I don't know if it would have made the difference. It looks like Trump's going to win Florida by like 4 points, but still another example of where the Democratic Party's got to do better for our community. And then on the island, I haven't followed it very closely. It looks like Pelosi is going to win the party in power now with literally a little over a third of the vote. The good news about the election, the governor's race, was we had 3 great third-party candidates. The problem is we had 3 of them. And so it appears that we've divided the vote, amongst 3 pretty progressive folks. And now the most conservative, the guy who's closest to the junta, the scuzziest guy, is going to win because we divided the vote on the island. Nevertheless, though, we're going to keep fighting for our brothers and sisters on the island here and on the island. And I know we'll have some more analysis on what happened with the island tomorrow. Melanie, Juan, just all the people in the chat, just incredibly thoughtful. If we had a little more time to organize this, y'all could have jumped on with us. But we just knew we were going to be in the field all day, so it was hard to plan. But we did want to get on here and talk about it. It ain't over. And again, this was what was expected. But at the same time, it's going to be tight. It's going to be tight. It looks like we're getting the today's vote in the upper Midwest. So that's why Trump's winning. So we'll see what happens when they open the ballots, and hopefully he's not able to stop or slow down that process legally. So we'll see, fam. But it's going to be tight. And despite an Arizona win, we still need we're going to need Pennsylvania.
Yeah, you're going to need Pennsylvania. I think so. Sorry, we couldn't deliver Florida for y'all.
Hey, it ain't your fault, brother. Hey, appreciate you, LB. I know you had a long day, and I appreciate you coming on with me again. Appreciate the people that watched, were as much a part of this as we were. Melanie, particularly appreciate your comments, and all of you. This was therapeutic for us, and all these folks have been on the show or will be on the show in the future, and we'll see what happens tomorrow. I think I don't think this is going to take long. I mean, I think by Thursday we're going to know one way or another. I don't think it's going to. I think they're going to want to count these votes fast. So we'll see what happens, fam. Tomorrow's another day. Appreciate you, LB. Hug the family.
Take care.
And thank you all so much for watching Found Translation. Peace.